Listen, I'm gonna cut right to it because I don't believe in wasting anyone's time. Especially when the market is flashing green and everybody's out here acting like they just discovered crypto yesterday. It's hilarious. You see the headlines? Alt season may be coming back. Maybe? Bro, if you're still asking maybe in 2025 when charts are screaming at you like neon signs outside a casino, I don't know what to tell you. You got XRP holding the floor, HBAR acting like it wants to rip people's faces off, Bitcoin chilling above levels it used to dream about, and people are still like, do you think it's safe to get in now? Safe? Safe was 2 years ago when you were crying about inflation and swearing you'd never touch crypto again because Jim Cramer told you it was dead. Safe was buying the bottom when nobody wanted to hear the word blockchain. Now, it's not about safe, it's about not being late. And let's talk about the comedy show that is Michael Saylor getting curved by the S&P 500. Oh my God, you can't make this stuff up. The man spent years mortgaging his future, turning his company into basically a Bitcoin ETF with extra steps, running around on podcasts screaming about, I will never sell. And then when it's time for the big leagues to finally say, hey, welcome to the club, they looked him dead in the eye and said, nah, you're good. That's the financial equivalent of getting dressed up in your best suit, showing up at the nightclub, and the bouncer takes one look at your shoes and says, sorry boss, not tonight. Except in this case, Saylor wasn't wearing dirty sneakers, he was wearing diamond-encrusted Bitcoin loafers, and they still told him to kick rocks. That's brutal. Now, don't get me wrong, I respect the guy's conviction. You have to, right? The dude's basically the poster child of all in. But let's not pretend the market doesn't see the risk. Because let's be honest, MicroStrategy right now is one bad quarterly report away from turning into a meme stock. They're one unexpected black swan from becoming the crypto version of Blockbuster. And that's why the S&P said, we'll pass. It's not that they hate Bitcoin. It's that they're not trying to put someone in the lineup who might collapse mid-game. Meanwhile, while that circus is going on, you've got Fireblocks out here quietly building what could become the replacement for Swift. Let me say that again for the people in the back who are too busy checking Dogecoin memes. A replacement for Swift. You know, that ancient financial messaging system that literally decides how trillions of dollars move around the world every single day. That's not some side hustle. That's not some gimmick. That's like saying, yeah, we're thinking about replacing electricity. And of course, the Ripple and XRP crowd is foaming at the mouth about this because they've been preaching for years. We're going to replace Swift. We're the chosen ones. XRP is the bridge currency. The banks are coming. And don't get me wrong, there's truth in that. Ripple has been grinding in the trenches for years, setting up corridors, making partnerships, fighting lawsuits, and still somehow standing. They deserve credit. But let's also be real, they're not the only ones at the table anymore. You got HBAR saying, don't forget about us. We've got enterprise deals you don't even know about yet. You got Cardano whispering, we're building in silence. You got Chainlink smirking in the corner because every single DeFi project still needs their Oracle data to function. And now you got Fireblocks saying, yeah, we're just going to casually roll out a network that could run global stablecoin payments like Swift 2.0. And here's the punchline. None of them are going to replace Swift entirely. That's the dirty little secret nobody wants to say out loud. Swift isn't some mom-and-pop shop that can just close up. Swift is deeply embedded into the very plumbing of global finance. What's actually happening, and this is the part the mainstream isn't ready for, is that all of these players are carving out slices of the pie. Ripple doesn't have to kill Swift. Fireblocks doesn't have to bury it. Stellar doesn't need to set it on fire. They just need a piece. And when the pie is measured in the hundreds of trillions, even 1% is enough to change lives forever. Let's zoom out because I know someone's about to say, but what about the charts? What about the prices? Relax, we'll get there. First, you need to understand the macro. The Federal Reserve has been dragging its feet for months, playing this game of, are we cutting rates? Are we not? And the market is like that kid in the back seat screaming, are we there yet? Because everybody knows rate cuts are coming. Inflation is cooling. The job market is cracking around the edges. The debt clock looks like it's about to short circuit. They don't have a choice. Liquidity is coming back. And when liquidity comes back, guess where it flows first? Not into your grandma's savings account. Not into 30-year treasuries. No. It flows into the fastest-moving, highest beta assets. It flows into crypto. It flows into the projects that can multiply, not crawl. That's why the charts are heating up again. That's why XRP is bouncing off key support like it's got springs underneath it. That's why HBAR is coiling up like a snake in the grass. That's why Bitcoin is just sitting there like a smug king, waiting to drag everything higher once the floodgates open. Now let's roast the people still doubting this rally. You ever notice how every cycle you hear the same tired excuses? Oh, it's just a dead cat bounce. Oh, it's just whales manipulating the market. Oh, regulation is coming. We're doomed. Bro, regulation has been coming for a decade. At this point, regulation is like that friend who says they're on their way but still hasn't left the house. Meanwhile, the market keeps running without them. You think BlackRock is sitting around biting their nails about Gary Gensler? Please, they're already building products, already laying down infrastructure, already sucking up supply while retail argues about whether it's a bull trap. You think the Fed is losing sleep over some influencer yelling about scams on TikTok? No, they're setting the stage for the biggest wealth transfer in history. And if you're still on the sidelines because you're waiting for a perfect entry, let me save you some heartbreak. There's no such thing as perfect entry. You either get in the game or you get left behind. And let's circle back to XRP real quick, because I know the army is out there with pitchforks if I don't. XRP is holding a floor around levels that used to feel like resistance. That's bullish. Period. When old resistance becomes support, you don't need a PhD in technical analysis to understand what that means. It means the market is saying, we're comfortable here. We're not going lower unless something drastic happens. That's the kind of setup that can launch a run to $2, $3, even higher if momentum stacks. Same with HBAR. People keep sleeping on it because it doesn't have the meme hype of a Dogecoin or the cult following of a Cardano. But behind the scenes, it's getting plugged into enterprise systems, supply chain networks, tokenization platforms, the boring but essential stuff that actually drives adoption. One day, people are going to wake up and say, wait, when did HBAR become a top 5 coin? And the answer will be, while you were busy chasing whatever animal theme token was trending on Twitter. Alright, let me pause here because I can already feel the energy building and we're just getting started. We haven't even dug into the CPI numbers, the October effect, the ETF flows, or why Fireblocks move might actually be more bullish for Ripple than people realize. But that's the beauty of this market. The deeper you go, the more you realize how much is happening at once. Now, let's really get into the meat of this thing because this is where most people's heads explode. Macro meets crypto. I keep hearing people say, oh, crypto is just a casino. It's disconnected from the real economy. Really? Disconnected? Then why does every CPI report send Bitcoin up or down like it's on a bungee cord? Why does Jerome Powell opening his mouth cause altcoins to either moon or nuke? You can deny the connection all you want, but the fact is, the Fed is the DJ, and crypto is the dance floor. Let's break it down. CPI, the inflation number, has been cooling. Not in a straight line, sure, but the overall trend is down. That's the only thing that matters. The Fed knows it, Wall Street knows it, and crypto knows it. Every time that number comes in lower than expected, it's like throwing jet fuel on the risk asset fire. Because what does lower inflation mean? It means rate cuts are closer. It means money is cheaper. It means liquidity is coming. And liquidity is everything. I'll repeat that until I'm blue in the face because too many people still think crypto pumps just because of vibes or Elon Musk tweets. No, vibes don't move billions. Liquidity does. When the Fed cuts, when bonds roll over, when banks start loosening credit, that tidal wave of liquidity has to go somewhere. And guess what? It sure as hell isn't going back into dusty boomer assets. It's going into the high beta, high return plays. That means tech stocks, that means AI, and yes, that means crypto. October through November. Mark it down, circle it, tattoo it on your forehead if you have to, is primed to be one of the most bullish stretches we've ever seen. Why? Because all the catalysts line up like dominoes. You've got CPI prints, Fed meetings, jobs data softening, and ETF flows cranking up. Do you realize how insane ETF inflows have been? Billions pouring in week after week. That's not retail hype. That's institutional conviction. That's the smart money saying, we're not missing this run. And here's where it gets spicy. When ETFs buy, they don't sell tomorrow because they're scared of a red candle. They're locked in. They're long-term. They're sucking supply out of the market and putting it in cold storage. So while retail is panic selling at every dip, ETFs are happily stacking. That's how you set the stage for a supply shock. And when a supply shock collides with rising demand, boom, that's when prices move so fast it makes your head spin. Now, let's roast some people, because what fun is this without calling out the clowns? You still got guys out here saying, I'll buy Bitcoin when it goes back to $20,000. Buddy, you had 2 years of consolidation, 2 years of a bear market to accumulate, and you didn't. Now you want a discount? That's like waiting for Ferrari to have a clearance sale. Not gonna happen. Bitcoin doesn't give you second chances. Punishes hesitation. And XRP? Same deal. People saying, I'll buy when it drops back under 50 cents. Newsflash. That ship sailed. We're testing levels now that used to be fantasy during the lawsuit days. And if you think we're headed back to those levels when institutional corridors are opening, when Fireblocks is literally building Swift 2.0 with stablecoins, when tokenization is the hottest buzzword in finance, you're living in a fairy tale. Speaking of Fireblocks, let's get into that, because this is where the Ripple versus Fireblocks tribal war gets juicy. Everybody wants to make it a death match. Oh, Fireblocks is gonna kill Ripple. Oh, Ripple is finished. XRP is obsolete. Wrong. Stop thinking like it's Highlander and there can only be one. The financial system isn't a duel. It's a buffet. Fireblocks can serve institutions with stablecoin rails. Ripple can serve banks with XRP corridors. Stellar can handle remittances. Chainlink can feed the data, and guess what? They all get paid. Here's the part nobody talks about. Fireblocks launching their stablecoin network might actually be bullish for Ripple. Why? Because it validates the narrative Ripple has been screaming for years. That Swift is outdated and blockchain rails are the future. Fireblocks just put a giant spotlight on the very pain point Ripple was built to solve. So instead of killing Ripple, they're amplifying the demand for alternatives to Swift. And you know what happens when demand rises? The tide lifts all boats. But let's be brutally honest for a second, Ripple has baggage. That SEC case dragged them through the mud. Institutions don't forget that easily. Some will hesitate, some will diversify, some will say, we'll hedge with Fireblocks or Stellar instead. That's just reality. But guess what? XRP doesn't need 100% adoption to win. It just needs a slice. And with trillions in cross-border payments, even a sliver of that pie is massive. Now, let's pivot to charts, because I know the technical analysis crew is frothing. XRP sitting above its key support levels is a chef's kiss setup. Every bounce is building higher lows. Every test of resistance is weakening it. That's classic breakout structure. You don't need a degree in chart wizardry, you just need eyes. $3 isn't a pipe dream. It's a magnet. It's waiting. HBAR? Same story. It's coiled up tighter than a spring. When it snaps, it's not going to walk. It's going to run. And the irony is, most people won't even notice until it's already doubled. That's how stealth plays move. They grind sideways, everyone falls asleep, then bam. Face-melting pump. And Bitcoin, the king. Oh man, the king looks bored. And when Bitcoin looks bored, that's dangerous. Because every time it goes sideways too long, it's like a volcano rumbling. You think it's calm, but really it's building pressure. And when it blows, it doesn't just break resistance, it obliterates it. Now let's tie it back to macro one more time, because you can't ignore it. Jobs numbers are softening. The Fed knows it. They can't keep pretending forever. Rate cuts are coming whether they like it or not. And when those cuts hit, you're going to see liquidity flood in faster than Michael Saylor can say laser eyes. That's why October and November are shaping up to be historic. Not hype, not hopium, math. And here's a little cherry on top. The October effect. If you've been around markets long enough, you know October has a reputation for big moves. Sometimes crashes, sometimes rallies, but always fireworks. This time, with ETFs in play, with liquidity turning, with crypto coiling, my money is on fireworks to the upside. The ETF flows are the biggest unspoken elephant in the room right now. Everyone's out here obsessing over meme coins, debating Ripple versus Fireblocks, arguing if Stellar will eat XRP's lunch. Meanwhile, the ETFs are vacuuming Bitcoin supply like a Dyson on steroids. Billions in inflows week after week like clockwork. And you know what that means? It means the whales aren't selling to you anymore. They're selling to BlackRock. And once BlackRock has your coins, you're not getting them back. Ever. Those coins go into custody, they vanish off exchanges, and they become institutional collateral. Retail, congratulations, you just lost custody of your own market. The ETFs own you now. And if you think they're gonna dump on your head for a quick 10% scalp, you're delusional. These guys aren't playing checkers. They're playing Monopoly. They're locking up supply for years. That's why Bitcoin looks boring. That's why volatility is dying down at the top end. The free float is shrinking. And when supply disappears, when liquidity thins, and when demand spikes, you get vertical moves, not steady climbs. Vertical, parabolic, melt-your-face-off rallies. That's what's brewing. Now let's roast the skeptics real quick. Because they deserve it. You've got clowns on Twitter still screaming, ETFs don't matter. It's all priced in. Oh really? It's priced in that the largest asset managers on Earth are systematically absorbing Bitcoin into regulated products for pensions, sovereign wealth funds, and insurance giants. Yeah, sure buddy, keep coping. That's like saying Tesla's stock price was already priced in before EVs went mainstream. Spoiler, it wasn't. And the funniest part? These same skeptics will be the ones chasing green candles when Bitcoin rips past $100,000. They'll FOMO in, screaming, this is the cycle top. Only for the real top to be 3x higher. Seen it before, we'll see it again. Because the hardest trade in crypto is the obvious one. Everyone knows ETFs are bullish, but only a few have the guts to actually front-run it. Now let's zoom back into the XRP saga. Because oh boy, this is where things get personal. XRP is the definition of misunderstood. Half the market thinks it's a boomer coin, the other half thinks it's a scam, and the small minority holding it know it's an asymmetric bet on the financial plumbing of the future. The Ripple SEC lawsuit scarred the narrative, no doubt. But scars fade, and narratives change fast when money's on the line. Here's the kicker. XRP doesn't even need to win everything. It doesn't need to be the sole swift killer. It doesn't need 100% of the corridor market. Hell, it doesn't even need 10%. Because the pie is so massive that even crumbs are life-changing. Trillions in annual cross-border volume. Capture 1% and you've got fireworks. Capture 5% and you've got generational wealth. Capture 10% and XRP is no longer a meme, it's a necessity. And all those Fireblocks versus Ripple debates? Cute but misguided. It's not zero-sum. Fireblocks building a stablecoin network doesn't cancel XRP. Proves the thesis. It's confirmation that TradFi wants on-chain rails. And when TradFi comes on-chain, it doesn't settle for just one lane. It uses multiple. Because redundancy is safety. Ripple gets lanes. Stellar gets lanes. Fireblocks gets lanes. And if you think one player losing means your bags are invalidated, you're thinking too small. This is what the tribalists don't get. They're too busy dunking on each other's chains to realize. The institutions are coming for all of them. Ripple's solving bank corridors, Stellar's owning remittances, Fireblocks is handholding asset managers, Chainlink is feeding price oracles, and even boring old Ethereum is the settlement layer glue. This isn't a WWE death match. It's a cartel. A cooperative capture of the new financial rails. And every project that survives gets stupidly rich off it. But no, retail still wants to argue about logos. XRP Army versus XLM Gang versus HBAR Brothers. Like it's middle school dodgeball. Meanwhile, the real game is trillion-dollar asset tokenization, ETF adoption, and central banks experimenting with CBDCs. You're arguing about jerseys while BlackRock is buying the stadium. Now, let's sprinkle in some chart realism because I know TA nerds are screaming in the comments. XRP's multi-year chart? A coiled monster. Higher lows building since the SEC case, resistance testing like clockwork. Once $1 clears, the $2 to $3 zone is basically an air pocket. There's no liquidity there, which means price won't climb through it, it'll teleport. And when it does, you'll see the same people who said, XRP is dead. Suddenly tweeting, I always believed in the mission. Save the screenshots because the hypocrisy will be glorious. HBAR? Same vibes. Low liquidity zones stacked above. These are the setups you dream about in accumulation phases, but retail ignores them because they're boring. Remember when Solana was boring at $20? Exactly. Nobody wanted it until it was $100. Same script, different coin. Bitcoin, boring, sideways, ETF controlled. Until it isn't. Until one CPI print hits, the Fed blinks, and the dam breaks. Then the same people mocking it for chopping sideways will be asking how it just added $20,000 in a month. And you'll sit back, sipping your coffee because you already knew. And let's not forget the calendar effect. October into November. If you've been around crypto cycles, you know the drill. Q4 is when the big moves happen. Q4 is when the fireworks light up. And this time, you've got ETFs, liquidity tides turning, macro softening, and multiple protocols jockeying for adoption. It's not just bullish, it's historic. So here's your slap-in-the-face reminder. Stop waiting for perfection. Stop thinking you'll catch the perfect dip. Stop convincing yourself there'll be another 85% bear market just because that's what happened last cycle. The conditions have changed. ETFs changed the game. Institutions changed the game. Liquidity changed the game. If you're sitting there saying, I'll wait for lower, guess what? Lower isn't coming. And if it does, it'll be so fast you won't have the guts to buy it. Because that's how markets punish hesitation. They dip just enough to shake you out, then rip without you. Over and over. Here's the blunt truth. You either position now during boredom or you chase later during hysteria. There is no middle ground. By the time CNBC is telling your grandma to buy XRP or HBAR, the easy money is gone. The ETF whales already ate. So I'll end with this. Stop thinking like retail. Stop fighting tribal wars. Stop begging for discounts that will never come. Think bigger. Think institutional. Think liquidity tides, ETF flows, multi-chain adoption. Because the future isn't one chain ruling them all. It's a cartel of winners eating together while retail screams in the corner. You're either in the cartel early, stacking during boredom, or you're on the outside coping during euphoria. Your move.